Hello, good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of the Good Guys Sports Podcast. Today, I'm joined by our usual guest, Jackson Gerke, Mike Roby. I'm your host today, Blake Gerke, and we have a very special guest, as you can tell by his cap from Duke basketball, Mr. Kevin Byrne. And we're also as well joined by Blake Limeberger, by the way, who just popped into the call. Today, we're going to be covering a lot of different topics, Duke basketball, a little bit of a college football preview and roundup, NFL preview and roundup, but we're going to start with Duke basketball as we have our special guest Kevin on. And I'm not sure if those have been watching a lot of football and the World Series is over, they might have missed, but the college basketball season has started. And we've seen a couple of teams playing their first game, Duke included, on Monday against Maine, a bit of a warm-up game. Kevin was there, and we'll get his opinion on kind of what he saw and overall the feeling for Duke basketball for this season in a second. But it's certainly a season that's gotten a lot of hype and a lot of preview versus the past couple seasons. This will be new head coach John Shire's third season here in Durham, and the first two seasons you would say that progression has been made from season to season. You know, finishing an Elite Eight finish last year, possibly not going out in the circumstances they would have liked in the tournament, but we did see a lot of progression in the regular season league play in ACC for sure, and a couple of the players that remaining from last year's roster that we'll touch upon will certainly add a lot of valuable experience to Coach Shire's team. But I mean, Jackson, we have to first off just talk about the sensation that is Cooper Flag and Cooper Flag mania that's taken over North Carolina, Jack. And I mean, all the hype in preseason, you know, everyone watching him in high school, everyone being wondering where he's going to go, and Coach Shire ends up bringing him to Durham. And you know, it's only one game, but the evidence of what we've seen from him and the practice scrimmages and in the game on Monday night, it's been super impressive. So I'll start with you, Jack. Are you fully experiencing Cooper Flag mania, and how excited are you for him to be taking the court at Cameron Indoor?
I think I am, Blake. If you look at his playing career, he has reading this article on Wikipedia that his career awards that he's achieved so far are that he has achieved the U.S. Basketball Male Athlete of the Year, National High School Player of the Year. He is a McDonald's All-American this year and Jordan Brand's Classic and a Nike and a candidate for the Nike Hoop Summit along with the Gatorade Men's National Athlete of the Year and there's actually more to that. So my dad, who works for an apparel company at Modestic Brands, who does different high school athletes from around the country and for the different jerseys and sports gear apparel that he does. Well, he was happy enough to get a photo shoot with Cooper Flag, and
I think he met one of the other Duke players as well, Jack, but
I know, but he was saying, well, I know, but Dad was saying to me that he was going to be doing a photo shoot with them at the Duke campus or in the Cameron Indoor stadium, which I feel like is what he told me. But I feel like maybe that's his opinion, or if you're different take on this. But really, if you look at his playing career, um, his his brother Rye was actually in attendance for the game against Maine this past Monday, and he was actually watching his brother, although his younger brother's school, his older brother's schools, it was Cooper's night. So really, it was his kind of night. So really, the brother Rye just kind of just had just no choice but to watch it from the stands with students. But that's really what it came down to. He's currently a 2025, 2026 commit to play for the to play for Maine. So really, if you think about it, he's by far, I think, going to be going to be by far a number one pick in this year's NBA draft and possibly the top pick of the 2025 NBA draft. And
Jackson, do you think Cooper Flag is going to be the key to the puzzle that pushes Duke into that Final Four championship contention?
if only if he can stays healthy. If not,
Mhm.
then he probably won't. So really, if you think about it, if you want to make a deep playoff run, postseason run or playoff run in the NCAA tournament, you gotta stay healthy and 100%, and you really just gotta get things right, and that's really what it comes down to. And so also about Cooper Cooper Flag, he also he also wasn't just committed to Duke. He was actually committed to play for Dan Hurley and the Yukon Huskies. Although, from what I'm hearing, that has been pushed back due to last year's tough times and the recent shootings of his hometown of Maine, which I'm sure all of you are aware. Which it was a tough time for him and his family having to deal with and go through it, which was definitely a hard time for them. So having to go and live through it. So really, as a player, he's learned through a lot ever since then. So 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 me personally, in my opinion, I just think Cooper Flesh is really, I think, by far the best player Duke has ever had in its history of his recruiting class.
I mean, that's a very bold claim, Jack. They've had quite a few big recruits, so I see you're not trying to put a small amount of pressure. You're trying to really ramp the hype up, which I appreciate. I appreciate. And yeah, I mean, listen, there's certainly, we've seen some great players come through the building over the years. And he's certainly among those. So I don't know if I'm quite ready to crown him the top of the class after one game, but I definitely appreciate the optimism. I want to bring Kevin into this conversation. He's a man on the ground there in Durham, and he's seen this team, and he's kind of experienced the preseason and the first game.
Hmm.
So I want to get your just kind of general atmosphere on how excited is everybody to have Cooper Flag in the building, and has seeing him kind of develop and fit into this team, like living up to the expectations that you had?
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, Cooper mania is real. There's no question about it, and it's not only here in Durham, but it's pretty much anywhere across, I think, the college basketball universe these days, and all. He's an extraordinary guy in many ways. I mean, he's a young man, and I emphasize the young part of it. December 21st, he'll turn 18. So currently, he's 17 years old. And his brother, who's a twin brother, and Jackson goes by the name Ace, I think.
Right.
Right.
Right. And believe it or not, Kevin, if I'm mistaken, his younger brother Rye actually happened to play at his school. I was reading an article on it that he just played at a previously transferred from having before he transferred to one of the schools colleges up in Maine, that he previously before the IGB Academy down there in Florida, that he previously played at some day school out in Greensboro, which is about an hour away from the Duke campus.
Yeah, that's right. Ace has been playing in Greensboro. You're absolutely right. And he has gone committed himself to Maine. Cooper and Ace were born and raised in Maine. Their mom had been a terrific basketball player in the women's game at the University of Maine. And Ace is choosing to go there is kind of keeping it in the family. Cooper, on the other hand, knew that he was, the whole family knew he was destined for, if you will, bigger programs. And you're right, he did. He started his high school career in Maine, but then transferred to Montverde in Florida. and all. I think one of the big things that caught our attention, and I mean not just Duke, but the basketball world in general, was when he was chosen to be part of the select team this summer that played against the U.S. Olympic team as kind of their warm up, if you will. Most of the other players were all professionals. And this young man at 17 years old received quite a few plaudits from these older fellas. But what's interesting about it is if you now that he's here and playing for us, he's played 3 games. Two of them were our exhibition games, one against Lincoln University from the Philadelphia area, and then Arizona State. And as I think Blake mentioned, now most recently Maine. And in the first game, he scored 22 points. In the second game, he scored 9. In this most recent game against Maine, he scored 18. My point is, he doesn't need to be the leading scorer. He doesn't need to be trying to finish with 30 and 40 points a game. He plays a complete game, and he is very much a team player. And I think that's what we've seen. He's as happy, I think, about an assist as he is about slamming that ball through the hoop. He loves to play defense, and he's very active on the defensive side. Um, he's just an all-around ball player. And I think that's one of the things that the pro scouts have been impressed with too, is this all-around game that he brings to the court and all. So we've been extremely happy with him. I think he's very much a team player. I think his teammates love him. He's willing to be coached hard. He's even willing to have his teammates in practice yell at him if he doesn't seem to be playing with the energy that they're hoping he would, and all. And that was mentioned by Chris Spatola the other night in his commentary on the game against Maine. So I think he's destined to be first team All-American, um, and yet he may not lead the ACC in scoring. He may not lead this Duke University team in scoring. He's got some great other freshmen with him. The one who's been the bigger surprise is Con Knippel from Wisconsin, who has been the leading scorer in 2 of the 3 games I talked about.
Yeah, he scored 22 against Maine.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. And in our first game, Mike, against Lincoln, in the first half, he hit 5 3-pointers. That pretty much set the stage. He only scored two points in the second half. But then against Arizona State, which was a surprisingly lopsided win for us. I mean, we ended up beating Arizona State by 56 points, but he had five more threes, but in the second half. So,
Yeah.
uh, but we knew he was a shooter, but I think we've been surprised by his all-around game because ultimately, if Duke is going to win, if Duke is going to uh, get to the Final Four, it's not going to be Cooper Flag alone that's going to determine that. Of course, it's going to be a team. And we do have, like mentioned, I think our 2 returning guys, really only 2 returning starters from last year's team, Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster, who are both guards. And then we've been starting 3 freshmen and all. But let me just stop there and see if if there are more comments from the rest of this all-star crew that's here tonight.
Duke's got a tough early road trip headed their way. They're going to be playing in Arizona and then playing on the 26th of this month against #1 Kansas.
That's right.
How do you think they're going to do?
Oh, I really don't know. I'm waiting to see. Somebody asked me several weeks ago, what did I think about the team? And I said, well, listen, we'll know an awful lot more on December 5th. And the reason I chose that date, Mike, is that actually this coming Tuesday, we're playing number 23 Kentucky.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Then we got, as you say, we've got the Arizona game on November 22nd, the Kansas game on November 26th, and December 4th, we're playing Auburn, which is currently listed as number 11, I think, on the AP.
Hmm.
So you're right. It's a pretty much a killer schedule for the first few weeks of the season.
Yeah. I mean, Kansas is going to be tough
Oh,
with
very.
the Dickinson 7'2" center.
Exactly. And the bulk that he has as well.
Hmm.
We have a 7'2" center also, but he's a freshman. And he's on the slim side. So Dickinson is going to be a load for him to try to handle. No question.
And and, and Kevin, that Kentucky Duke game is going to be at the State Farm Classic down there in State Farm arena down there in Atlanta.
Right.
Yes, which has always been a ESPN traditional thing that they do every year. Like like every year is different. For example, it's not just Kentucky. You would either have to play Michigan State, Kansas, or Kentucky. That's it. So to me, that's really how this tournament really plays out for this championship classic, which I feel like which I feel like to me is the best live event show on TV that I always watch and tune in every year. So now obviously for years they played in the United Center in Chicago and then at Madison Square Garden prior to that, and then but this year and then also in up in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil slash Allen Fieldhouse. But now this year they're doing something different. They're going to be playing this game in Atlanta at State Farm Arena. So it'll be totally new, but just about the same, really. So that should be what I would think must see TV to watch, Kevin.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And along that same line, since that in what you're talking about here, Jackson, is the fact that it's a neutral court. Also, that the Kansas game won't be in Allen Fieldhouse or Cameron. It's going to be in Las Vegas. And all. I'm not sure, Mike. I'm not sure how much of a difference that makes, but it'll be interesting to see these two teams go at each other, neither with a home crowd behind it and all.
Yeah. I saw you don't play UNC until February 1st.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Yeah, and it's the earlier of the two games. Last year we had the later, and it was March 9th. But as a matter of fact, now that you mention UNC, they will be in Allen Fieldhouse tomorrow night.
wow.
They end up playing Kansas tomorrow. So we're not the only team. And I wonder if this is I think about the fact that Baylor was at Gonzaga, played Gonzaga the other night. Maybe this is beginning to emerge as a pattern that the teams are realizing that rather than just set up 6 games against teams that you should be beating by 15 or 20 or 25 points, that it's better to get some highly competitive games against some strong opposition early in the season to really get a gauge on yourself and to get, particularly in our case, with once again a very young team, to get them accustomed to high level college basketball.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
just curious, the number of freshmen that Duke is starting, it leads me to believe, recruiting is going to be so much harder nowadays than it would have been, especially with that in the transfer portal. Can you talk a little bit about what you think of the recruiting and
Yeah, John Shire has even before he became head coach had been the Mike Krzyzewski's lead recruiter for the last few years of Mike's tenure at Duke, and he's continued to recruit at a very high level. The What's fascinating is what's happened with the transfer portal, the mobility that has entered into the sport. We had 7 players leave last season, the end of last season, Mike, but we brought in 6 high school players, starting with Cooper Flag, but we also brought in 4 transfers. It was a way, the transfers, I would say, was a way for us to get older and more experienced quickly. And I think, I'm suspecting that John and the staff reached the conclusion that if if you're going to make it work and you want to get really far into that NCAA tournament, you can't ignore the need for experience and older players. So of the 4 that came in, 3 of them have been important contributors already. Malik Brown came in from Syracuse. He's a junior, but he was on the All ACC defensive team last year as a sophomore. Um, Mason Gillis came in from Purdue. Uh, he's a graduate student for us. He was voted 6th man of the year in the Big Ten last year. And Sion James, young man from also graduate student, but a young man from Tulane, has come in and brought a lot of energy and 4 years of experience as well. So it's interesting to see the need to balance that. I mentioned the 3 freshman starters that you picked up on, but in all of these 3 games, I don't think the starting center, Kaman Malawash from South Sudan in Africa. Uh, I don't think he's played more than 6 minutes before Malik Brown has come in to relieve him. So and what I can see is John trying to mix more experience with the younger players.
yeah, it sounds like a good balance.
Well, we think so, and I think that's one of the things that differentiates us from the last couple of years. Not that we haven't relied on some, uh, um, what am I trying to say? Some players that have come in through the portal. We have, but I'm inclined to think what we have now are players who are going to play a more significant role on in the construction of this team than we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point as well to mention the mix of experience and incoming freshman talent. I think that mix of having, like you said, Cooper Flag, who, like you mentioned, is not somebody who's, you would say, is a ball hog. He likes to spread the ball around and
Right.
contribute on the defensive side of the ball as well. And then Con Nupel as well. I think I might be
I think
missing
he pronounces it Knipple.
Con Knipple, who
K
he's
K2 if you prefer.
K2.
Yeah,
I might
because the
just use
con
that
is
one.
KON.
Yeah.
But yeah, if he's going to be sort of a spark plug as well, from that backcourt, just kind of filling in the rest of those positions with a blend of experience and size as well. And then obviously, like you said, having a couple of, grad transfers filling in as well off the bench. Just from the past couple of years, obviously the teams that have performed well in the tournament, we've seen a bit of a flip as you don't necessarily, you're not centered around just one or two amazing incoming freshmen. You kind of need that mix, especially when you get late into the season, right, Kevin? Like especially when you get into the AC tournament play, and then you're really getting long into the season, and you need those one or two guys off the bench to kind of help fill the gaps, right?
Oh, I think that's exactly right. I mean, something that Jackson mentioned, of course, which is always in play, is the question of health. And by the end of a season, everybody's got nicks and strains and all. And so the ability to bring in people who have had good game experience. Geez, to bring in a guy like Mason Gillis, who played in the national championship last year for Purdue, he's this kind of invaluable to, I'd say, you know. So it's got to be a team, and this is another point I guess I'd throw in. Um, Oftentimes, it'd be curious to see how this evolves, but oftentimes, you know, a coach gets down to maybe 7 players, 5 starters, and two fellows off the bench, particularly. We're going, we're playing 10 players so far this season. Now that may well shrink and all, but we still may play 8 or 9. I would say, which is we'd like to think would be really helpful as you go through that lengthy season and you get into the month of February and you started off, as Mike points out, with UNC, and you've got a lot of league games in front of you, and it can be a brutal schedule, and all. So having that depth may we'd like to think it's going to work in our favor.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
Right. So, and the thing about right. And so the thing about Cooper Flag is that whenever you have to go up against go up against the Duke UNC Tobacco Road rivalry, which those games matter, by the way, is that you always got to deal with, which would always come down to matchup, which those matter. And so really it'll be a one-on-one against Cooper Flag, against RJ Davis, which I feel like is great for the conference of the ACC and great for college basketball, in my opinion. The best two blue bloods of school, other than Kansas or Kentucky or Michigan State, to name a few. So, yeah. And also, one more point I would like to make is to get my correctional stuff about Cooper Fletch is that he actually, to correct myself, that he transferred and prior to Maine is that he played his college ball at the Greensboro Day School out there in town, and then that he is and then he and then that he grew that and then that he and also that he grew up actually not in Bangor, Maine, but in a town called Newport. So
Mhm.
there's some other last minute facts you should know about Cooper Fletch, which I think definitely a great player that can succeed if not only in the AC best player in the ACC, but maybe in the entire country of college basketball for sure, without question, which I think everybody can agree on.
Yeah, for sure. It's certainly going to make Duke must-watch TV, as if, I mean, they usually always are, right, in terms of college basketball teams that you want to follow. But certainly having Cooper Flag as a part of that program is just really only going to make them more interesting to watch. throughout the season. And like we said, there's some interesting matchups coming up here before we get into the ACC play as well. So definitely going to be an exciting season for the Blue Devils. So I'm sure we will be touching upon them more and more as we progress through the season. So as we transition here to a little bit of football chat, Jackson, I wanted to switch to college football because I know that we just recently had a fresh set of college football playoff rankings come out, which I think this year is even more particularly interesting given the expanded format. So I know the new playoff rankings, we had the top teams, Oregon being number one, still undefeated, followed by Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, Texas, Penn State, and then, teams flowing in before that. But I just wanted to ask Jackson and to the wider group if anything particularly stood out to you when those fresh set of college football playoff rankings, anything of note that you noticed when those came out, Jack?
Not a whole lot of surprises to look into. I think really on a ranking standpoint that really teams like the Indiana Hoosiers, which nobody even saw coming, they played a soft schedule. They avoid Ohio State, and then BYU is also up to a great start,
Yeah.
and Western Kentucky and Notre Dame, which who knows about them, and then Boise State. That's a very interesting team to watch down the stretch, which I feel like it's going to get who knows how it's going to play out for the rest of the year as
Well, Boise State probably have the
down
top running back in the country right now.
Yeah, Ashton Genty.
Exactly. So I guarantee you, if any team that matches up against Boise State in a playoff matchup now in this expanded field, they're gonna be pretty concerned about stopping him, aren't they, Mike?
They are. I mean, he's on the one of the people to watch for the Heisman.
So I think
He's only averaging 8 yards per carry.
yeah, I mean, you can definitely make the case that he's coming up against weaker opposition, but if that was the case, then you would see a lot more Ashton Gentrys before we've seen him this year, right? So I think he's an outstanding running back from what I've seen. And like I said, I think any team that has to scheme against him from like a SEC or a Big Ten is going to be really, really concerned, and they're gonna take him seriously for sure if Boise State is able to keep up the pace they're on right now and kind of find their way into that playoffs. They could cause some trouble for sure. I think also as well, I think it'll be interesting to see how with the remaining schedule, teams in the Big Ten and the SEC kind of filter in there. I know Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Penn State, all these teams have gotten off to really strong starts. Alabama is filtering in there in that 11 spot as well. So obviously there's going to be a couple of matchups throughout the rest of the season that will end up, possibly throwing a few curveballs in there. I know looking at the matchups for the current week, Alabama is taking on LSU, who may have thought they were looking on the outside in, but all of a sudden you get a couple of wins against some highly ranked opponents late in the year, and you might sneak your way into this 12-team playoff. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, well, Bama's lost 2 SEC games on the road this year.
Right.
They're going on the road now down in Death Valley to play LSU. So that would be a game to watch.
Yeah, that Bama LSU game, Jackson, is always one that's certainly of interest, right?
That's right. That's right. That's the one that everybody has their eye on and circled. And yeah, Alabama LSU is definitely the game to the committee is watching for sure, just to figure out for worst case scenario, no matter what play or what's really happens in that game, there's definitely going to be lots that's on the line down the stretch for what's up for grabs at this point for what really comes down for this matchup. Because think about it, Nick Saban has always bring success to Alabama, but Kevin Byrne hasn't really shown or ever or ever seen any of that yet. So it's really going to be another test for Alabama, in my opinion, just to see how they how they play or turn out, or just how it goes. Quite honestly, in my opinion, I just think it's going to be a challenge if Alabama's going to have any chance to find a way to win at Death Valley, which I think they will, but it's going to be tough.
You're all going to have some sibling rivalry this weekend. The
That's right.
Gamecocks visiting Vandy.
Now let me let me bring in BL Weinberger right here for this one, because I got to talk about this matchup with you, because South Carolina, they were down by double digits, or at least only by a few points, or I would say right towards late second quarter, until South Carolina tied it, thanks in large part for some Texas A&M penalties, which really cost them, in my opinion.
I take what you can get.
And then really South Carolina just continued to play that Beamer ball, and just really just to me, what it looked to me, that South Carolina just found a way to win, and showed some no quit and never giving up on this locker room for this team. And I love this Rocket kid. He can, and think about it, this guy can go straight up to the moon if he wants to. He's that good. He's that great a player. And so far, I think he can, and so far he's delivered. And I think that this guy can really do it all. He's shown us for what he did last Saturday at Williams-Brice Stadium at night. I watched it last night. I was texting it. I was definitely texting it to you last night right when the game ended. And I got to tell you, the fans were hungry and deserved it down there in Williams-Brice. And they really needed it quite about now, because they have previously lost the last few games against AP top 10 matchups. They needed this one, Blake, and they deserve it. Now they're up for another challenge against another test against my brothers, Vanderbilt Commodores, out in Nashville. The question is, Blake, can BL Weinberger, can we do it?
Oh, well, Jack, 100%. First of all, that Texas A&M win, I love my Gamecocks, but I'm not gonna lie, I was a little shocked. Okay, the way that they won it and by how much they won, they got a great quarterback. I mean, this guy, I think he's a true freshman from South Carolina, local product. I don't think he was recruited by a lot of schools. Had direct specs on early on. So absolutely they can beat Vanderbilt. But look, Vanderbilt knocked off Alabama, so not so fast with a huge win. But yeah, the Gamecocks got a lot to be hopeful for right now, and love seeing them put those points up on the board. They got a tough defense when they want it, and yeah, go Gamecocks, Jackson. Surely, I think they beat Vanderbilt.
Not so fast, I say,
Not
Jack.
so fast.
Now, listen, I think it's going to be a close one. I mean, obviously, Blake mentioned it. Vanderbilt have obviously taken a few scalps this year, none bigger than the Crimson Tide, and they played Texas close as well. To be fair, if you watch that game, they were in it in the fourth quarter, and a couple of just silly mistakes kind of ended up killing them. But they were close to having victories against Alabama and Texas at home, and I think that's kind of the key. Is Vanderbilt is at home in this game, and their home form has been very strong compared to the away form this year for the Commodores. So I think that, you know, obviously there'll be Gamecock fans there, Jack. I'm not going to deny you that, but you know, I think getting the South Carolina team at home, we're coming off a victory against away at Auburn as well, and I know Auburn's not what they used to be, but it's still a good away win in the SEC. So I'm confident in the doors, Jack. I'm taking Vanderbilt here, man.
So I was reading something today, and it was mentioning the South Carolina pass rush is number 2 in the nation, and Vanderbilt's pass blocking is number 118 in the nation. And
Something has to
so
give.
something might give on that game. So Vanderbilt better get their running game because they have to rely on pass blocking.
Yeah.
That might be
I think Diego Pavia might be running for his life on Saturday, it sounds like.
it's gonna be a good game.
Here's a question about Duke football. I mean, Duke always, they're a basketball school, but man, they've had great football teams for not great, but I mean over 500, top 25. It just seems like every year, no matter who their coach is, they just seem to have a good football record. What's going on with this, Kevin? Are you guys at some point are people going to say, well, maybe we're both?
I think, I mean, I don't know that football will ever catch up with basketball, but that is to say, that's not a knock on the football, Blake. It's just a statement about the way in which Duke basketball has captured the attention, I think, over decades now. But you're absolutely right. There were decades when if Duke football could achieve 3 wins in a season, you thought it was fairly successful, uh, and all. When David Cutcliffe came in here about 2009, it really has changed things around. Um, we're I think, frankly, those of us who follow the football are a little bit surprised at the ability of the team this year to adjust to a completely new coaching staff. Losing one of their prime players in Riley Leonard, who left to go to Notre Dame, and Manny Diaz has done a terrific job, and his staff, I should add, has done a terrific job, I think, in making us a strong defense program, which is interesting because, of course, Mike Elko came in and did something similar for 2 years. I think Manny Diaz is continuing that, but it's if we can keep Manny, I think that's good. One of the challenges we always face, though, is depth, and partly that's because we can't necessarily recruit the kind of players or the level of players that end up going to more powerful schools, and I include South Carolina in that, Blake. That but so I think we certainly will be um, we have the potential, I think, to stay at above 500 and all. And I think Duke football has to look at an 8-4 season as a highly successful one. And
Absolutely.
you know so I don't. That's where I don't think unlike basketball, I have a hard time believing that it will be in the hunt for a national championship.
Right.
Basketball, on the other hand, they've got a shot. But maybe
Yeah.
let's see what the other guys think here.
Why? I mean, yeah. I mean, and watching that game away at Miami last week, I mean, the final score doesn't really tell the tale of the game if you watch it, because Duke was really in it for a majority of the game. Miami pulled away late, and give them credit for that offense they're putting together there is quite impressive. But honestly, it's just it's a tale of a few plays here and there, and you can look at the SMU game the previous week as well, where if one kick goes the other way, then all of a sudden you have a win against a ranked opponent there, and the game went to overtime, by the way, as well. So yeah, I mean, in a different scenario, this team could be 1 loss or 2 loss and possibly looking at competing for that ACC conference. But that's the game of football, right? When you're coming up against tough opponents, something doesn't go your way, you have to kind of roll with the punches. But yeah, I mean that putting up 30 against Miami is no mean feat, and obviously the defense kind of fell apart there at the end because Miami ended up scoring over 50, but they were in that game for a while. So I think definitely one to keep an eye on. The rest of the schedule, they're playing here in Raleigh on Saturday against State, and then a couple games against Virginia Tech and Wake. So, I mean, overall they're 6-3, and that's certainly a decent record. So if they're able to finish the season strong, get into a good bowl game, that's nothing to sniff at for sure for Manny Diaz's men. So, yeah.
When we got that sixth win and became bowl eligible, I love the way Diaz put it to his players. He said, "Look, we're going to be in a bowl game, but we're not satisfied. Every game from now on will determine how good a bowl game we're going to get."
Right. That's important.
So it's a neat way to keep the focus, I think, on not becoming satisfied with where you've gotten so far. You got to keep building as you move on through. And if only that Miami game had been a 47-minute game instead of a 60-minute.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm gonna petition them to decrease the college football scoreboard time. Yeah, after that one.
Also happening in college football, we have Georgia coming off or I should say, or wasn't for me, depending on who you ask or talk to, or what I should say, a the comeback of a 20-point or 10-point lead against Florida in the world's largest outdoor party. I'm not going to mention those words on a show. I'm not going to mention any of those drinks on the show just because we're a family show. I'm not even going to mention it. They won last week on one of the best comebacks and probably in all of the conference in that game.
Yeah, it was closer than they would have thought, huh?
Yeah, that's right. And then they now will go on the road against Hotty Toddy and the Ole Miss Rebels, and Ole Miss 7-2 against Georgia 7-1. Ole Miss, if I look at their schedule, it's really interesting because my match predictor is saying that Ole Miss is a 5.3.9 favorites, and then really, if you think about it, Georgia is a favorite, which I find interesting, the way I look at it, and so really, Jackson Dart, who has been playing off to a great start, only had a few losses of his resume during his playing career, going up against a great Georgia against Georgia and Carson Beck and Aaron Smith, who had put up great numbers last week against Florida and down in Jacksonville at the outdoor party down in Jacksonville, which really shows you something about what they can do offensively and defensively both sides of the ball. So, and then on the flip side for the other game, Florida and Texas coming off their loss against the Dogs last week, and then Texas, they just lost one of their wide receivers to the transfer portal, so that's going for you. And then Florida has announced that they will keep their head coach Billy Napier for the future, for in the long term in the contract, which something tells me they will give up on to not hiring Lane Kiffin, which I feel like is smart for them, for that team down there in Gainesville. So that says a lot. So let me ask you guys about this Ole Miss Georgia game. Does Ole Miss have a shot to pull off the upset against Georgia, Blake?
Georgia's looking good, Jack. They they got their one loss in, and that might be the last one all year. How about that? Georgia wins.
All right. I think we can all agree that the Dogs are by far the best team in the conference, right?
Best team in the conference. I think. Yeah, I guess I was gonna make a case for Texas, but obviously we saw that head to head, and Georgia kind of took care of business there. So, yeah, I'm not gonna argue with you on that. Yeah.
And
Ole
then
Miss is playing at home though,
that's
You
true.
got to factor
That's
that in a little
true.
bit. Yeah.
and they took care of Arkansas at Arkansas last week, which blew my upset pick. They won, but they won 63-31.
Yeah.
So Georgia needs to be on their top game. If Georgia's playing the way Georgia can play, then Georgia will win.
Tough to beat, yeah.
But if they make mistakes, have too many penalties or turnovers, better strap in because it'll be a close game.
Yeah, to your point, Mike. Georgia did make some mistakes early in that game last week against Florida down in Jacksonville. Florida had the lead at halftime, but then realized that that actually their quarterback got injured late in the second half, and that was really how it all turned out for the Gators last week. But now Florida's not ranked. They're most likely not going to go to the college football playoff. I think Texas is going to beat them. So yeah, we can all agree Texas is definitely going to beat Florida because let's be honest, Florida's not a football school anymore, like the days of Steve Spurrier and Tim Tebow. So we can all agree with that and punt their season. So yes, I think Texas is better than Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
agreed, Jack. I want to next move on to
talk, some NFL.
yeah. I think now we should touch upon a little bit of NFL action with the remaining minutes that we have. And usually on this show, we like to at least touch upon the Thursday night game. And there's been a couple of not so great ones recently, but tonight is a bit of an exception. I think Cincinnati at Baltimore might be one of the best Thursday night games we've had in quite a while. And these AFC North teams, it's been a pretty competitive division. Cleveland, not so much, but Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh have all kind of, the past couple of years been competing for that division. Cincinnati got off to a bit of a rough start. They're a bit up and down, but they can certainly change their fortunes tonight if they're able to get a result in Baltimore. But my big picture question for tonight is, do we think, I know the Chiefs are 8-0, but the way that Lamar Jackson is playing, do we think Baltimore is the best team in the AFC right now? Does anybody have that opinion?
They're definitely the best offense.
Okay.
And they're going to be getting their running back back. So
in my opinion, Lamar and Derrick Henry is the best quarterback running back combo in the NFL right now. So do we think that's going to be something that carries them come January?
I wouldn't bet against them.
Yeah. In my opinion, looking at what they did in NFL at the trade deadline that happened this past Tuesday. That way, if I look at the Ravens, they have required. We know about Lamar Jackson. They got Derrick Henry in the offseason, and they just added Zay Flowers and Rishaw Bateman, which I feel like maybe you got to think they can go toe to toe with the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, but only time will tell. But you got to think they can somehow finally break through against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And who knows, maybe it can happen, but only time will tell.
Yeah, the Ravens picked up two wide receivers at the trade deadline. More people for Lamar to throw to.
It's turning into a bit of an arms race in the AFC in terms of sort of these trade pickups we saw with the Ravens picking up Deontay Johnson, the Chiefs grabbing DeAndre Hopkins as well at the deadline. I think Pittsburgh ended up picking up a receiver as well.
Yeah, they picked up Mike Williams from the Jets.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So kind of a lot of these teams that know they're going to be there or thereabouts come playoff time are really filling in those gaps for sure. So this AFC playoff hunt is going to be definitely kind of the race to keep an eye on, because I'm counting 3 or 4 teams that all think they have a shot.
So who do you think's the best in the NFC?
Okay, so let's get to that for a second. So for me, I wouldn't declare it just yet, but in the NFC, we have had some things. I think right now the Detroit Lions are the best team in the league, but we have had a trade that just happened involving Uncle Mike's hometown team, and that is the Commanders land Pro Bowler Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints. You think about and you think about it with their from what the Saints did for this season. They fired their head coach Dennis Allen. They don't have Drew Brees anymore. They're in a rebuild, and the Commanders and Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and then Cliff Kingsbury, they're building something special up there in Washington. So if you're a Commanders fan like Uncle Mike's listening right now, you got to feel excited and just and really think that your team is finally beefing up and getting one of your key players to the defense, because other than that in the perimeter, they don't have any other big playmakers on the defense side of the ball. In my opinion, Marshawn Lattimore can do all that, and he can really make a difference and be the best playmaker on the team, and can really change it all. Because think about it, the Commanders have a tall task in hand. They have to host they have a game at home, and they have to host the Steelers, which we all know the Steelers love to travel where they go, no matter where the game's at. Or
So
no
many yellow towels.
That's right. It's always going to be a Steelers home game, no matter where they go or travel. Steelers fans will be there. And
So we're fighting that this weekend.
yeah,
The Commanders are giving out burgundy towels at the stadium.
Yeah, they're going to be everywhere, Mike, and there's going to be a bunch of fans taking all over the place. And yeah, there'll be a bunch of Steelers fans, and then not looking too far ahead myself, but then you also have to go to a raucous, hostile environment crowd up in the link in Philadelphia
Next Thursday.
Right, next Thursday we talk more about that, but yeah, you got to track down their top wide receivers and the Commanders haven't been tested yet. They got to go up against TJ Watt and the Steelers. Yeah, the Steelers, like I said, will be everywhere at Northwest Stadium out there. It'll be a Steelers takeover. That'll be an interesting game to watch. And then yeah, in Philadelphia, yeah, the Commanders are going to be tested in those next two games up in the Steelers. And then at Philadelphia, the Eagles, we'll talk more about that a little way ago. But in my opinion, you got to slow down Saquon Barkley, because the Commanders haven't seen them yet, and they will be tested. So even they're off to a 7-2 start. So
Yeah.
get there themselves, even though you're tied up there in DC for the fans in Washington. But yeah, you're off to a great start for free agency, but you got to just but you just don't want to look too far ahead. Even if you want to make a Super Bowl or playoff run, or even go up against teams like the Eagles, the Lions, or the Falcons, for that matter.
Have you guys played the Eagles yet, Mike, or you still have two against
We
them?
have not played the Eagles yet.
Those will be good matchups now.
That's going to be tough. The Steelers are going to be tough this weekend, but the Commanders has got the number 3 offense.
Right.
And going against Pittsburgh's number 9 defense.
Something has to give.
So, well, won't be the Commanders.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one. That'll be a fun one. Yeah, in Washington as well. Give it
In
an
Washington.
edge. So yeah, that's a great matchup.
And Brian Robinson should be playing this Sunday. He did not play up in New York last week.
Right.
And so it's going to be good.
Mike got a buddy who used his FanDuel $20 free bet before the season to take the Commanders all the way to win their division, and the payout on that right now is it's looking pretty handsome.
Yes, indeed. That's a great bet. I wish I had done that.
They're trying to get him to cash it out for a lot of money, a lot less than the amount if he wins.
Yeah.
Real quick, even though we're very short on time, but meanwhile, in other news involving with NFC teams, free agency, the Cowboys make a surprise deal with Jonathan Mingo from the Carolina Panthers. They acquired a 2025 fifth-round pick, and to me, I heard a lot about it on Sports Talk on ESPN that the price is too high, which I feel like is a mistake the Cowboys should never make. Jerry Jones deserves better. He should have never went to this team to the Cowboys. it's way too expensive for me, and I feel like, to me, they made a mistake. What do you guys think?
Well, Cowboys are playing the Eagles this weekend, and I mean, in my opinion, their season's over. I mean, if you watched them last week against the Falcons, they didn't muster up too much. Dak is going to be out for an extended period as well. So, I mean, in my opinion, the Cowboys should be sellers now. They're certainly in no shape to compete against Philadelphia and Washington in that division. So,
Yeah, I don't see them beating the Eagles this weekend. I mean, Lamb may or may not play. Parsons may or not play. And the Eagles offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, was the Cowboys defensive coordinator in 2019 through 2022. So he knows the Cowboys offense.
revenge game.
Cowboys are going to be starting their second string quarterback, Cooper Rush.
Yeah, I think maybe the only scenario is the Eagles just, overlook them and lay an egg and they're just not prepared for it kind of thing. But
yeah,
I mean,
Barkley's having a heck of a year, and
yeah,
Hurts is finding his groove back.
for sure. Yeah, it seems like they're coming into their stride right now. So yeah, I think Eagles look good for that one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, in other NFL news, the Seahawks add Robert Rodson Harris, acquired from the Jacksonville Jaguars 2026 round pick, and then the Seahawks also require Ernest Jones, IV, from the Titans, for Jerome Baker. Want to shout out to Miss Karen about this, and hope that she's watching the show, just so that I can break the news like Adam Schefter does on ESPN and Ian Rappaport on NFL Network, so that I can just shout out them for what the Seahawks did, for requiring this trade, even though they're not big time star players. That's what I want to shout out to as well. And also, before we go, if any of you guys, Mike Roby, watched the Dodgers championship parade? Well, Shohei Ohtani gave the speeches, and Freddie Freeman, that the team is on quest for a three-peat to join the list to name a few. Quite honestly, it hasn't happened, but one of them, the 1990s Yankees. And so that's what I want to shout out to, and also want to shout out and I also want to shout out to Mary Allen's son, Chris Taylor, who is on the World Series roster. That's what I want to shout out to as well. And also, I don't know if you guys see this, but Shohei Ohtani was had a shoulder of his dog that looked like that believe it or not looked like any shell and Uncle Rob's dog per second, which I gotta say looks very similar. So that's what I want to share the audience with as a rep of the show is the Dodgers championship parade, and you know what, as after watching it and having realizing that, something tells me that after watching it that they're going to be on quest of doing the three-peat like the Yankees did in the 90s. So keep your eye on that.
For sure. I think there's a lot of other teams that will have something to say about that. But yeah, no, they're certainly a great team, and
I mean,
compliments to them for sure.
The city of Los Angeles could happen again. Go back to the days of the Kobe and Shaq days when they three-peated back in the early 2000s.
I get it.
It could happen again for the City of Angels.
You never know. You never know. All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up there. I just want to give a thank you to Jackson, Mike, Roby, and Blake, and a special shout out to our guest, Kevin Byrne, as well, for providing us some great insights on Duke basketball. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us, and everyone watching and listening as well. Make sure to follow Good Guy Sports on YouTube and check us out on Spotify as well. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
See you guys.